Hello, lovely, and huge welcome to another episode of Taking Time to Heal. So, I hope you have set this time aside for you to focus on you, maybe light a candle, tell your loved ones you're not to be disturbed because this is your time, right? I'm sure you spend an enormous amount of time looking after other people in the house and doing jobs and chores and all of those things that we have to do in our day-to-day life. But I just want to remind you that this time is for you, and I hope you give yourself permission to really feel that without any guilt, without any judgment, and really be present as we go in to today's topic. So you may want to light a candle, get your journal ready, maybe light some incense, whatever it takes for you to truly sink in to this topic with me today. Now today we are talking about the third Huna principle, and it's something that we've probably all heard and probably can all see the sense in it, but I wanted to really talk about it in a lot more detail today, what it really means. And this third principle is called Makia, and it means energy flows where attention goes. Now we can look at this from so many different angles. We can look at this from the point of view of perspective, right? Where we're putting our perspective, where we are putting our focus. So, for example, I know for me that there have been times in my past where I have had intentions, goals, things I wanted to manifest, and I would play a really passive role in that process. So I might, send an intention out to the universe, maybe incorporate a bit of Reiki into that, maybe incorporate some meditation. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think many of us in this spiritual healing space can fall into this kind of passive energy where it's like, there you go, that's what I want, universe, bring it to me. Bring it in. Yet, we're often not meeting the universe halfway. And I've got a really good example of this actually. I used to do this a lot with money. So I would ask the universe to help bring in X amount of money. This was particularly useful when I first went self-employed, and it was really lovely because it allowed me to feel supported. It allowed me to step into more states like flow and surrender. But then when sometimes that wouldn't happen or that wouldn't work, that energetic manifesting, I would take time to just dissect what had gone on. And pretty much every time it was because I was not taking responsibility for the part that I was playing in that manifestation. So I might say that I wanted to bring in more money, but energy flows where attention goes, right? So other than the manifestation and energetic side that I was working with, the rest of the time I was just walking around with my head in the sand, didn't want to look at money, didn't want to track it, didn't want to look at spending, just kind of fingers in my ears and kind of la 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 la. Let me know if you resonate. I would love to know. And I had to start looking at this, and I'm laughing because that part of me was really, really trying hard, right? She was outside of her comfort zone. She was having to step up. She was doing all of these things that really pushed her boundaries, and all the things that had allowed her to feel safe. She was venturing outside of that. So of course I was doing the best I could with what I had available to me at that time. And if I wanted that to change, I had to do something different. And so I thought, okay, so even if I'm not taking particular action in towards bringing that thing to me, I need to at least allow my attention to be on that thing that I want more of in my life. So lo and behold, when I start tracking money, when I start looking at what's coming in, when I start looking at what's going out, I started to notice that actually those things started to come in more, right? And we notice this with things like our goals. You know, perhaps you've got a health goal, like, and I'm laughing because this is such a common story that I hear. I will have a client come to me and they will say, I really want to lose weight. I want that to be my goal. And when I say, okay, so how much of your attention, time, energy are you putting towards that goal of yours? And often the response will be, well, I'm not really. And so I think sometimes we can get into this really kind of vicious spiral in our head where we have this goal, we're not devoting the time, the energy, the focus towards this goal. And then when it doesn't happen, it just gets used as a way to beat ourselves up and then start focusing on the goal again, but not actually doing anything about it. So what I wanted to invite you to think about today is this idea of you have in a day a certain amount of time, a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of resource available to you. And it can be really unhealthy if we're giving ourselves this big long list of goals that we feel we should be living up to, yet our resource of time, energy, what's available to us is not lining up to it. So if we think about our attention a bit like a flashlight, right? If you're shining a flashlight in one spot, then the likelihood is that light will be bright, right? If you're shining it directly, quite close towards something, that light is going to be really focused in, and because it's really focused in, it's going to be brighter, it's going to be more intense. Yet, when we're having to spread our attention, right? Many of us are juggling so many things. You know, I'm a mum, I run a business, I'm here most of the time, so I do a lot of the house stuff. We also have a camper van, we're doing up our house. I have a husband who I love and adore. I have a dog. So because I've got all of these beautiful, amazing things going on in my life, often my attention is having to be a bit wider and less focused in on something. Now, the more we spread our attention, the less we're able to hone in, unless we, give ourselves time to focus on particular things. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because I want to highlight the fact that many of us have a big long list of goals in our head, that actually when we look at the resources available to us, we just do not have enough resource. We do not have enough attention. We do not have enough time. We do not have enough, we won't have much left if we spread this too thin. So what I wanted to invite you to think about is, as you're setting your goals, as you're setting your intentions, are you spreading yourself too thin? Would you be better off focusing on one thing, and that one thing improving because it's easier, because you've got more attention to do something with that? Do you know what I mean? You can really get your focus into it. And I'll give you some examples here of what I mean. So often I will work with clients who have these wellness goals. And say, for example, I have a client who's been through a period of chronic illness. You know, I think, well, I can certainly relate to this. I've had these periods in my life where, you know, they might be coming off the back of a really long flare-up or a time when their body was really not doing well, and they're having to rebuild their fitness and wellness. It's something I've had to really work on this year, after like last year was a bit of a write-off for me in terms of my wellness. And so I've had to gradually start building things back in because of my ill health last year. But here's the thing. If I let my brain do that in the way it wants to do, it will immediately jump to my absolute end goal of where I want to be. So if I want to improve my fitness, my brain will often go, right, well, you need to go to the gym every single day. You need to be lifting weights. You need to be doing a certain amount of cardio. You need to change your diet. You need to, and then before I know it, I am so overwhelmed that none of it gets done. My attention has been spread to all of these different things, and I can't do any of them. I've gone into overwhelm. It's too much. Whereas the approach that I take with clients is we start small, right? Small, manageable, bite-sized things that feel doable, that feel like, oh, do you know what? I think I can commit to that. Many of you know, one of my favorite kind of starting points for people, especially if you struggle with something like being agoraphobic, or you have anxiety, social anxiety, if you have any of those kind of, you know, and let's be honest, if you've been struggling with something, with chronic illness, that also affects your confidence. It affects your ability to see yourself positively, and you can start to become anxious and nervous about things that you weren't before. And so I like to make like our little goals as doable as possible, and that not only gives us this kind of confidence boost, because we're like, oh yeah, I've done it, you know, like doing anything gives you a bit of a dopamine rush, right? Whereas if you set a big goal that you're never going to meet initially, then you just use that to beat yourself up, and the whole process becomes 10 times harder. So one of the goals I will often ask people whether they would like to take on, you know, I never enforce goals on people, obviously. This is about your wellness and what feels right for you. But an invitation I often offer people is, if you do want to improve that movement, for example, if you want to make the effort to go out for a walk every day, but that feels really far away right now, then often I would say, okay, can you commit to leaving your house and going to the front gate every day, or to the, you know, wherever it is that you're on your road, can you get to the public path and then just come back? That's all you have to commit to every day. And what will happen is most people will go, oh, well, yeah, of course I can commit to that. And then what actually happens is people will often take on this challenge, say for a month, and they will get to the front gate and they'll go, oh, well, I'm here now. I may as well just have a quick walk around the block. And so they might do that. And then the next day, same thing happens. Lo and behold, you get to the end of the month and you find that actually you're going out for walks that are 2, 3, 4 miles long. And had you tried to do that at the beginning of the month, it would have felt too much and you would have sabotaged yourself and it wouldn't have happened. So I invite you to consider this. We're at that point in the year, we're at that midpoint. And if you haven't seen, I'm actually running a couple of free events over the next couple of weeks to help us realign with our intentions for this second part of the year. Often we get to this time of year and we haven't looked at our intentions again. Perhaps the goals we set in January fell off in February. Or perhaps we didn't even set any goals and now we're feeling a little bit directionless, life's feeling a bit hard. And the truth is, if we don't give ourselves a direction, if we don't set a path for ourselves, then we will flounder. And this floundering place can often feel very dissatisfying. Is the word I want to use. Now, this is different to a place that we've set aside to integrate new things, right? So often we will go through healing periods where we spend the time studying, understanding, observing, and then we have this separate phase where we're putting those things into our day-to-day life and we're trying them out and we're experimenting and we're seeing if we can catch ourselves in those moments. So my point being that even this period of integration of our healing cycles needs an intention behind it. Because if we don't have that intention, if we're not focusing our energy, it spreads. And it will spread out far and wide, and then we feel like we're not achieving anything. We feel like we're just playing out the same patterns. We feel like we're doing the same thing day after day after day. Now, I genuinely believe unless we actively choose to grow, to move forward, to expand our comfort zones, to try new things, then actually a part of us kind of starts to wither. We start to go the opposite way. We start to contract. We often start to harden as well. So our heart becomes a bit harder. We might become a bit more bitter, a bit more resentful. We might feel more disappointment in ourselves. And it's a great excuse, right? To like start piling on that self-criticism, that self-blame, that self-loathing, that big backpack of rubbish we like to carry around. So this process of giving yourself time to really think about, okay, where do I want to go? What is my intention here? What are my goals right now? What am I working towards? Now, that may not mean that you know what the end goal is, right? You may just have a sense of that. That's kind of how my mind works. Some people are very detailed, they're very specific, and they can see it in that immense detail. Now, I do believe the more detail we can see something in, the quicker we're able to manifest it. Because we're clear, right? We know what we want, we're going after it. Things start to align, the universe starts to work with you, opportunities come in, and it becomes this kind of beautiful, magical experience. But if we don't take the time to do that, to consider what are those goals, then we find that sense of directionless. directionlessness that creeps in and starts to eat away. Because we're meant to head towards something, right? We're meant to have lessons to learn. We're meant to have experiences. We're meant to try new things, rather than being kept in our little safety net that begins to swallow us up. So, lovelies, I wanted to also mention this from a different viewpoint, or something else, that a different way of also looking at this, just to touch on, although this kind of corresponds with another Huna principle, so we will go into it in more detail later. But for now, the other way this can show up for us is our attention in any given moment is somewhere. Now, it might be on the past, it might be on the future, it might be something that we're doing, but 9 times out of 10, right? Well, certainly in my brain, perhaps not in yours, but 9 times out of 10, our brains are thinking about 1,001 different things. And again, I wanted to remind you that when our attention is somewhere else, like the past, if we're spending all our time going over the past, things that have happened to us, things we've experienced. Now, I'm not talking about PTSD here, but I'm talking about our tendency to want to either jump backwards or to jump forwards. Now, what Ayurveda teaches us is actually some of us are more prone, well, we tend to be prone to one of these more than the other. So, for example, I'm predominantly Pitta, fire energy, because of my constitution, because of my build, because of my hair, because of the way my brain works. Basically, I am more drawn to spend my time focusing on the future, which also means that I tend to miss out on the now. This is something I have to continually train my brain to come back to. And we'll talk more about that in another episode. But for now, I wanted to invite you to consider this idea of attention, and a few different questions for you to ponder. First one being, what are the things that take your attention every single day? Being really honest with yourself, where is your attention most of the day? And sometimes we've never given ourselves permission to even observe this within ourselves. And so what you might want to do is start to keep a bit of a log. Was thinking about that thing, and obviously you can't do this 24/7, but if you notice patterns starting to come up, not from a place of judgment, not from a place of trying to fix it, but from a place of curiosity initially. So, for example, I know I probably spend a good, I would say probably a good 40% of my energy and attention, at least 40%, goes on not only providing care to my children, but also them worrying about them, right? And if I look back probably 5 years ago, this would have been an enormously higher. It just so happens that two of my children have now reached adulthood, which has given me a little bit of, thank God for that. Thank God they can take on some of that responsibility for them, for their own well-being, for their own health and happiness and success. So that number would have been a lot higher 5 years ago. But the truth is, I do still spend at least 40%. If I'm honest, I think I'm being really low with that, and it's probably more like 60%. But an enormous amount of time, not just caring, but thinking, worrying, being concerned about, being happy for. Some of these things are really beautiful. But when it comes to my kids, right? So I homeschool my youngest. I spent a lot of time thinking about his education, wondering if he's getting enough, wondering if I'm doing it right, trying not to be too self-critical in that process, and more curious, and not always easy, right? And so knowing this, my point being, knowing this, I am not going to set myself a goal right now, knowing that that's already 60% of my attention has gone. It's gone on to my kids. Now at least another 30% is on my business, probably, most of the time. I'm starting to think I've gone over the 100% as I'm adding this up. And then I've got my husband, then I've got my dog, then I've got, fun and enjoyment and pleasure and hanging out with friends and going out in our camper van and doing up the house and all of those things. So knowing how full my attention is right now, I do not desire to take on another goal that's going to divert that attention away from what's most important to me right now. So what's important to me right now is my family, is fun, pleasure, enjoyment, is me building a business that's going to be able to support people and help people when they have got things going on for them, whether that be mentally, emotionally, and physically. These are the things that I support people with. So knowing all of that, I am not signing up to a marathon, right? I am not feeling the need to take up a new hobby right now, because I don't have the attention span available right now. Now, if it was something I truly wanted to do, I could make that decision. But I also have to accept that means taking attention away from something else. Now, I think this is a really good reminder when we're setting goals and intentions to consider actually what's within my capability right now. And when I say capability, it's more about capacity. What's within my capacity? And the things that just aren't within your capacity right now, remembering not to waste any time worrying about those things. So say, for example, you're continually telling yourself you want to lose weight. But when you look at where your attention's going, and actually the things that mean the most to you, that is not up there. And it is not important enough for you to devote your time, attention, and energy to right now. If you have decided that is the case, let it go. Just let it go. Because all that will do is continue to sap your energy away. Be kind enough to yourself to decide where your attention is going and allow that to be enough. It doesn't have to be this big grand thing. You don't have to conquer the world. And often a lot of our intentions and goals, I will often invite people to run it through a particular lens as you're setting a goal, setting an intention. And the lens is, why do I want this? Why do I actually want this goal? Now, if the answers you get back are about external validation, people thinking something of you because you've done that thing, if when you put yourself in the position of already having done it, it doesn't light you up, it doesn't get you excited, then the likelihood is this goal, this intention is coming from a place of your beautiful little ego, who is desperately trying to cultivate a great identity for you. And there's nothing wrong with having a good, a healthy identity and a healthy relationship with self. But actually what we don't want to do is live our life because we think it will give us validation from others. Because if we think it will make us a such and such type of person. We don't want to live our life based on ego, based on what our ego thinks other people will approve of. So if you're interested in looking at this in more detail, I would invite you to visit my website, hollyboulet.com. And if you click on events or what's on this month, you will see a long list of events that are happening, and that also includes an intention setting, mid-year intention setting ritual that we're doing in our free community. And after that, we also have an online retreat celebration that will be happening on the 1st of August, which again will be going into this more from the energetic side, more from a ritual and ceremony point of view. And we will have a time to go a little bit deeper in that session too. But they are two different sessions. We're going to come at them from different angles. So if you do want to get clear on your intentions, if you are feeling a little bit directionless, if you're feeling a little bit stuck, like you're repeating the same thing over and over again, and it's feeling like Groundhog Day, and you're getting frustrated with yourself, and you're piling on a list of all the shoulds you feel you should be doing, then I invite you to join us so that you can actually bring a little bit more soul clarity to that list, so you can ensure those things really are important to you, so they really do matter and they're worthy of your time and attention. And give yourself the opportunity to be supported not only through the cognitive aspects of that, but also the energetics, the somatics, the part our body and our energy system, our nervous system plays in this process. I would love for you to join us. And if that sounds good to you, like I say, visit my website, hollyboulet.com. So spend some time with this concept today. Where is your attention going? Get curious with that and start to think about, is this where I want to be spending my attention? Is this helpful to me? Is this not helpful? Where's somewhere else, or where's something I can put down around my attention? And what's something I might want to pick up? What's something I may want to focus on more to bring more good stuff into my life? All right, lovelies, I'm going to leave this with you. Spend some time thinking about this, and if you've got any questions or you just want a feedback, I would love to hear from you. And as always, if this has resonated with you, it would mean the world to me if you could give this a like, a subscribe, a follow, depending on where you're watching it. Maybe leave a review, maybe share it with a friend or a family member that you think would find this useful. It helps me so much, with the algorithm, with reaching more people and getting out to the people that need it most. So I hope that all sounds good to you, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.